She was left to die. Her ticket was stolen, her money was gone, and the last train west had just vanished into the Montana blizzard. This wasn't just cold, it was the end. But as the ice began to numb her fingers, a dark rider emerged from the snow. He wasn't there to offer pity. He was there to offer a choice. Welcome back to our Story Hub, the place where we dive into the true stories, the fiction, and the legends that grab your heart and refuse to let go. If you love stories of survival, redemption, and the raw, untamed frontier, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on. You won't want to miss how this one unfolds. Eliza Vance collapsed onto the frozen bench. Her nurse's bag, the last thing she owned, was clutched against her chest like a shield. The train's whistle faded, swallowed by the brutal Montana night. Gone. The last train west, and with it her last hope. Her fingers were losing feeling. She didn't know if that was mercy or cruelty. December 1887 had teeth. The wind off the mountains bit straight through her wool coat, the good one from Boston. Worthless now against this frontier cold. Snow began to fall. Soft at first, then harder, heavier. The station's single oil lamp flickered like a dying heartbeat. She tried to stand. Her legs buckled. This was how it ended. Not in a hospital where she belonged, but on a forgotten platform in the middle of nowhere. Tickets stolen, money gone. Pride was all she had left, and pride couldn't start a fire. Hoofbeats broke through the wail of the wind. Eliza looked up through the snow. A rider, tall in the saddle, his dark coat dusted white. He reined in his horse, a massive bay that snorted steam into the frozen air. The man dismounted, moving toward her with deliberate, heavy steps. Station's closed, Eliza said, hating how her voice shook. I can see that. His voice was deep. Careful. You waiting for someone? The train? It left. Last one went an hour ago. I know. Eliza tightened her grip on her back. He just stood there, studying her. She could barely make out his face in the lamplight. Weathered, maybe 35, with eyes that had seen things. Money in the cut of his coat. I don't need pity, she said, forcing the words past her chattering teeth. Good. I don't give any. He held out his hand, a thick gloved hand. But I won't leave you to freeze, either. Eliza looked at his hand, looked at the empty darkness behind him, looked at her own hands, blue-tinged in the lamplight. She took his hand. He pulled her up with surprising gentleness, steadying her when she swayed. Up close, he smelled like leather, pine, and something indefinable. Safety, maybe, though she'd stopped believing in that. Silas Croft, he said. Folks call me C. Eliza Vance. He lifted her onto his horse like she weighed nothing, then swung up behind her. He didn't ask. His coat simply came around her shoulders, blocking the wind. As they rode into the dark mountains, Eliza looked back once. The empty station disappeared into the snow. Everything she'd been running toward vanished, but the warmth at her back was real. She allowed herself to lean into it. Just this once. Eliza woke to firelight and the smell of coffee. For one confused moment, she was back in a hospital dormitory. Then she saw the bearskin rug, the rough-hewn ceiling beams, and remembered. The cowboy, the ride through darkness, strong arms lifting her down. She sat up fast. Too fast. The room tilted. Easy. His voice came from the doorway. Silas. That was his name. He held a tin cup. You were hypothermic. Another hour and. He stopped. Coffee. Eliza took inventory. Still dressed. Her boots were beside the cot. Her medical bag sat on the table, untouched. It was a one-room cabin. Stone fireplace. A single window showing pre-dawn gray. Where am I? Foreman's cabin on my ranch. Elias retired, but I kept it maintained. You're safe. Safe. That word again. She accepted the coffee, letting the heat seep into her palms. I'll be gone by morning. It is morning, he said, not unkindly. The next train, then? 3 days. 3 days. Eliza's chest tightened. 3 days of charity, of owing, of being the pitted woman he'd rescued. I'll work for room and board, she said, her voice firming. I am a surgical nurse. Your ranch hands get injured. I can help. Silas leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You don't have to. I'm not a charity case, Mr. Croft. Something shifted in his expression. Respect. Maybe. Just Silas. And if you're offering, I won't refuse. This ranch is dangerous work. As if summoned, shouting erupted outside. Silas moved fast. Eliza grabbed her bag. Followed. The scene was chaos. 3 ranch hands struggling to hold down a 4th. "It's Miguel," someone yelled. Caught his arm on barbed wire. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripping into the frozen mud. Eliza didn't ask permission. She knelt, opened her bag, and took control. "Hold him still. Someone get me clean water." "You." She pointed at Silas. "Whiskey." Her hands moved with practiced, efficient grace. Cut away the sleeve. Assessed the damage. A deep laceration, but thankfully no arterial bleeding. She cleaned, sutured, and wrapped. 12 minutes, start to finish. Miguel's breathing steadied. The other men stared, silent. Eliza stood, wiping her bloody hands on her skirt. She met Silas's eyes. 3 days, he said quietly. "You work, you stay. No charity." "No charity," she agreed. That evening, an old man arrived at the cabin. Gray beard, kind eyes, hands weathered like old wood. This was Elias. He looked at Eliza through the window, then at Silas on the porch. "Boss, the town's on talk," Elias said, his voice low. "A woman that pretty, that young, stay out here." Silas's voice was flat. "They always do." But his hand gripped the porch rail so tight his knuckles went white. Inside, Eliza pretended not to hear. She'd heard it all before. In Boston, the whispers had destroyed her. She wouldn't let them destroy her again. The buckboard creaked to a stop in front of Harmon's General Store. Eliza had forgotten what it felt like to be watched by dozens of eyes at once. No, she remembered. That's why she'd run west. Hope's Crossing, Montana. False front buildings, frozen mud streets. Mountains looming like judgments. It had everything Boston had. People, gossip, conclusions drawn before facts were known. Silas helped her down. "You need a proper coat. Boots, too, if you're staying." "I can't afford. I'll work it off." He was already inside before she could argue. The store smelled of dried goods, new denim, and would smoke. Mrs. Harmon, the proprietor, smiled too widely, her eyes calculating. "Mr. Croft, how lovely. And this must be your guest." "Miss Vance works for me," Silas said evenly. "She needs outfitting." He held up a heavy wool coat, deep blue. Well made. Eliza touched it. Hesitated. Taking things felt like sinking. The bell over the door chimed. Mrs. Eleanor Thorne swept in like winter itself. 50s expensive dress, eyes sharp as ice picks. The banker's wife. The town's self-appointed moral authority. "Silas Croft," she said, her voice carrying across the silent store. "How generous of you to take in strays. Though one does wonder what services she's provided in exchange." The store went silent. Eliza's face burned. Here it was. Boston all over again. Different town, same cruelty. Silas could stay silent. Could let it pass. He could. Instead, he stepped beside Eliza. His hand rested briefly, firmly on her shoulder. In frontier terms, it was a claiming gesture. Eliza knew it. Public. Deliberate. "Miss Vance is a skilled surgical nurse," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "She saved my ranch hand's arm yesterday. My ranch is safer with her there." He turned to Mrs. Thorne directly. "Your husband's bank nearly foreclosed on the Johnson family last month over $50. Glass houses, Eleanor." Mrs. Thorne's face reddened, but she was too practiced for an outright confrontation. "Really, Mr. Croft, people will talk." "Let them." Silas paid for the coat. Handed it to Eliza. "I've got work to do." Outside, Eliza breathed hard. Snow began falling again. Always snow. Endless and cold. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I'm leaving in 2 days anyway." Silas loaded supplies into the wagon. A long pause. Too long. "What if you didn't?" Eliza looked at him. Really looked. She saw something in his eyes that terrified her. Hope. The kind that got crushed. "What are you saying?" He didn't answer. The train station was visible in the distance, its platform empty and accusing. Neither of them moved toward it. "One more week," Eliza heard herself say, "just to be sure Miguel's arm heals properly." Silas nodded once. One more week. But they both knew it was a lie. The kind you tell yourself before you let someone matter. This was just the beginning of her fight. The frontier was unforgiving, but the town was worse. If you're feeling the grit in Eliza's journey, a quick tap on that like button really helps our stories reach more people. Now, let's get back to the ranch. 2 weeks became 3. Eliza told herself it was professional responsibility. Miguel's wound healed clean, but there were others. A broken finger from a stubborn mule, a set of cracked ribs from a horse kick, a fever that needed watching. She told herself it wasn't about the way Silas looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. January froze the world solid. Silas's prized mare was dying. He knew at the moment he walked into the barn and saw Duchess lying on her side, breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. Eliza was already there, kneeling in the straw. Her hands were gentle on the horse's distended belly. Twisted intestine, Eliza said without looking up. Without surgery, she'll be dead by morning. Silas's face went to stone. Duchess had been Sarah's horse. His wedding gift to his wife 7 years ago. One of the last things he had left of her. Can you save her? I can try, she said. But I've never operated on a horse. I need you to hold the lantern. And keep it steady. 2 hours. Silas watched Eliza's hands move. Steady, confident, merciful. Blood and sweat and absolute focus. She worked like someone who had made peace with impossible choices long ago. The mare lived. Dawn broke gray and cold. They sat outside the barn, exhausted. Steam rose from their coffee in the frozen air. Silas spoke first, his voice rough. My wife, Sarah, died 3 years ago. Consumption. The doctor. He didn't arrive in time. Eliza said nothing. She just waited. I keep thinking, his voice cracked. If I'd ridden harder to fetch him. If I'd known sooner. I couldn't save her. You can't carry that, Eliza said quietly. Can I? She looked at him, her own past surfacing. I made the right medical choice in Boston. I chose the man who could survive over the one who couldn't. The poor man over the councilman's son. She paused, the bitterness still sharp. It was right, but right doesn't pay rent or buy respect. I lost everything. You saved a life. So did you, she countered. Just now. You held the light steady for 2 hours. You saved Duchess because you trusted me. Silas was quiet for a long time. Then, Eliza, why did you really run west? Because I'm tired of being punished for doing good. He understood. She saw it in his eyes. Later, Elias found Silas fixing the cabin window, adding a bookshelf, carrying extra firewood inside. You're courting her, Elias stated. Not a question. I'm making repairs. Sure you are, boss. Elias grinned, a rare sight. That woman's got a spine of steel and a heart she's afraid to use. Don't waste this. Silas said nothing. But that night, Eliza watched from her window as he walked toward the main house. He stopped halfway, turned, and looked back at her lit window. He stood there a full minute, a dark shape against the snow, then continued on. Eliza's hand touched the cold glass. The loneliness was worse now, because she knew what it felt like to almost not be lonely. The blizzard hit at dusk, turning the world white in minutes. Silas had come to secure the cabin shutters. He got caught. Now he stood by the door, snow-covered, looking trapped. You can't leave, Eliza said, stating the obvious. Visibility is 0. You'll die before you reach the main house. I shouldn't stay. She met his eyes. Propriety can go to hell. I'm not letting you freeze. They sat on opposite sides of the fire. The space between them charged with everything unsaid. The wind howled like wolves. The cabin creaked and groaned under the assault. I haven't visited Sarah's grave in 6 months, Silas said suddenly, staring into the flames. Feels like betrayal. Eliza poked the fire. She want you to live. That's not betrayal. That's honoring her love. How do you know? Because I'd want the same. Her voice softened. If I love someone, I'd want them to survive me. To find joy again. You're allowed to heal, Silas. He stared at the fire. I don't know if I remember how. Neither do I. The temperature plummeted. The fire wasn't enough. Eliza made the decision. Survival dictated it. She told herself. Just survival. She moved beside him, wrapped them both in the thick wool blankets from the cot. Silas's arm came around her shoulders. Hesitant, careful, her head fit perfectly in the hollow of his shoulder. They sat like that for an hour. 2, not speaking, just breathing together as the storm raged. Eliza. She looked up. His eyes asked permission. Hers gave it. The kiss was gentle, tentative. Two people afraid to break. When they pulled back, both were shaking and not from the cold. I don't know how to do this again, Silas whispered against her hair. Neither do I. She pulled the blanket tighter. So, we'll figure out together. Or fail together. He pulled back just enough to see her eyes. I'm not planning on failing. They slept wrapped in each other, the fire burning low, the storm raging outside. Morning came clear and brutal. Cole prepared to leave. They hadn't spoken about the kiss. Couldn't maybe? Words would make it real, and real could be destroyed. At the door, Clara said, This can't happen again. Not unless you're prepared for what the town will do. Cole turned, his hand on the latch. I'm prepared, but his hand trembled. Outside, in the distance, a figure on horseback watched through the trees. Mrs. Thorne's stable boy, delivering supplies after the storm. He'd seen Silas leave the cabin, seen how long he'd stayed. The boy turned his horse toward town. The secret was out. Eliza stood at the front of Hope's Crossing Church. 20 pairs of eyes bored into her like nails. She'd been summoned. A town meeting. Urgent. When she arrived, they were waiting. Reverend Davies's face was sympathetic, which was worse than contempt. Sympathy meant pity. Mrs. Thorne stood front and center, righteous fury wrapped in silk. We're concerned, the Reverend began, for your welfare, Miss Vance, and for the moral character of our community. Concerned, Eliza repeated flatly. You've been living on Mr. Croft's property for over a month, Mrs. Thorne said, her voice sharp. Alone, unwed. People have seen. What have they seen? Impropriety. A woman of your situation. Taking advantage of a grief-stricken widower. Taking advantage? Eliza's voice cut like a scalpel. I've set bones, delivered babies, and saved lives. Including your cattle hand, Mrs. Thorne, when he had pneumonia. What exactly am I taking advantage of? Your personal life is your concern, Reverend Davies said gently. But when it affects the community's moral fabric. My personal life is my own, Eliza interrupted. I've harmed no one. The church doors opened. Marcus Croft, Silas's younger brother, strode in. Slick suit, ambitious eyes. He'd been in Denver for weeks. His timing was suspiciously perfect. Miss Vance, Marcus said smoothly, I'm afraid this situation has become untenable. My brother's grief has clouded his judgment. He looked around the room, gathering support. For everyone's sake, you'll need to leave the Croft property by week's end. Eliza's face went white. Does Silas know about this? I'm the co-owner of the ranch. I have the authority. The doors open again. Silas. He took in the scene instantly. Eliza surrounded. Marcus playing judge. The whole town watching. His eyes met Eliza's. 1 second. 2. He hesitated. Eliza saw it. Saw him calculate the cost. His reputation. His brother's approval. The town's judgment. She saw him falter. That was all she needed. She walked toward the door, head high. She passed Silas without looking at him. Eliza, don't. She disappeared into the winter afternoon. Silas stood frozen. The church watched. Marcus smirked. You did the right thing, brother. Silas didn't answer. He walked out, got on his horse, and rode to the cabin. Empty. Her medical bag was gone. The coat he'd bought her was folded on the cot. Left behind. Like a return gift. Elias found him there an hour later, sitting in the dark. You hesitated, Elias said quietly. In that room, you hesitated. And she saw it. For the first time since Sarah died, Silas wept. Eliza's hands were raw from washing dishes in the saloon's kitchen. 2 weeks in Hope's Crossing proper, living in a boarding house that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. The town kept its distance. Polite enough, but cold. She was marked now. At least no one could accuse her of impropriety. At least she was alone. Like she was meant to be. The scream came from outside the saloon. Eliza ran. Emma Thorne, 16 years old, collapsed on the boardwalk, clutching her side, her face gray with pain. Appendicitis. Eliza knew it instantly. Get her inside, she commanded. Mrs. Thorne arrived in minutes, frantic. She took one look at her daughter. At Eliza. What's wrong with her? Appendicitis. I need to operate now, or she dies. You're not a doctor. I'm all you have. Choose. Mrs. Thorne looked at her daughter's gray, sweating face. Nodded once. Eliza operated on the saloon's kitchen table. Whiskey for anesthetic. A butcher knife she'd sterilized in boiling water. 2 saloon girls held the lantern steady. 30 agonizing minutes. The girl lived. Mrs. Thorne sat with Emma afterward, holding her hand, weeping with relief. Eliza cleaned the blood from her arms. Packed her bag. Thank you, Mrs. Thorne said, without looking at her. She needs rest. Watch for fever. Eliza walked out. No payment. No credit. Just the work. Just like Boston. At the Croft Ranch, Silas was falling apart. He didn't shave, didn't eat. The ranch hands exchanged worried looks. Marcus kept pushing. Sell the ranch. Start over. Forget the nurse. Silas rode to Sarah's grave, drunk. I'm sorry, he told the headstone. Sorry I'm such a coward. You deserve better. Eliza deserved. His voice broke. I did it again. I failed again. Elias found him there. Your wife died, boss. That was tragedy, but you're alive, and you're choosing death anyway. That's just waste. What if I lose her too, Elias? You already did. Elias gripped his shoulder. But maybe she'd let you earn her back. Sunday morning, Silas rode into town. Elias handed him Eliza's coat. Go get her. Snow began to fall. Silas walked toward the church doors. Inside, hymns. Outside, his heart hammering against his ribs. He pushed the doors open. Mid-verse. Silas Croft walked down the center aisle like a man walking to his own hanging. Every head turned. The hymn died. Reverend Davies stopped speaking, mouth open. In the back corner, Eliza looked up. Her heart leaped. Traitor. I need to say something, Silas said, his voice echoing in the silence. You can listen, or you can throw me out. But I'm saying it. No one moved. 2 weeks ago, I stood silent when this town judged Eliza Vance. I hesitated when she needed courage. I was afraid. He looked directly at Eliza, walking toward her. Afraid of losing again. Afraid of gossip. Afraid of being seen as a fool. But you want to judge someone's morality? Judge mine. Eliza saved Duchess when no one else could. She saved Emma Thorne last week, operated in a saloon kitchen without payment. In Boston, she lost her career because she chose to save a poor man's life over a rich man's son. Mrs. Thorne shifted uncomfortably in her pew. She's the best person I know, and I was too much of a coward to say it when it mattered. Silas stopped in front of her. Miss Vance, I'm standing here in front of everyone who hurt you and asking, will you marry me? Not to make you respectable, but because I don't want to spend another day pretending I can live without you. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Eliza stood slowly, walked down the aisle. Every eye followed. She stopped in front of him. You hesitated. Before. I did. His voice was raw. I won't again. Not ever. Then yes. The church erupted. Gasps, whispers, shocked exclamations. Elias stood up. I stand with them. Miguel stood. Me too. One by one, the ranch hands stood. Then Mr. Harmon from the general store. Then, slowly, reluctantly, Mrs. Thorne nodded. Once. Defeat, but also acceptance. Reverend Davies cleared his throat. Well, I suppose we could do this wedding right. Right now, if you're both certain. Eliza laughed. Her first genuine laugh in weeks. Right now works. The Reverend married them on the spot. No flowers, no fancy dress. Just 2 broken people choosing each other in front of everyone who tried to tear them apart. As Silas kissed his bride, someone began clapping. Then another. Then the whole church. Even Mrs. Harris, barely, grudgingly. This is insane, Eliza whispered. Silas smiled, his eyes shining. Welcome to marriage. Outside, snow fell soft and clean. The mountains stood witness. And for the first time in 3 years, Silas felt warm. April came to Montana like a promise kept. The cabin, no longer really a cabin, stood with new walls, new windows, a real porch. Wildflowers Eliza had planted bloomed purple and gold around the foundation. Inside, the smell of fresh bread mixed with wood smoke. This was what home smelled like. Eliza ran a small clinic from the attic room. Everyone was welcome. The town called her Dr. Coleman now, and she didn't correct them. Respect was respect, however it came. Marcus had left for Denver, never reconciled. Elias lived in the main house, helping Silas run the ranch. The land prospered. Mrs. Thorne visited one afternoon. Stiff but genuine. She brought preserves. Thank you for saving Emma. I should have said it then. Eliza nodded. You're saying it now. That's enough. Some things didn't need full redemption. Just acknowledgement. Evening. Eliza stood on the porch, hand on her pregnant belly. 6 months along. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Silas came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her. They looked out over the land. The barn where Duchess grazed with her new foal. The fields gone green. The mountains purple in the distance. You know what I realized? Eliza said, I spent so long running from judgment, I forgot to build toward anything. And now I'm building everything. The coat hung by the door. The one Silas had bought her that first week. Waiting for the child who'd wear it someday. A hand-me-down hope. The sun set, gold over the Montana frontier. Somewhere in town, the train whistle blew. The same train that had left Eliza behind 6 months ago. But she didn't turn her head. Didn't even notice. She was already where she belonged. Elias walked out of the barn, tipped his hat to them, smiling. Welcome home, Mrs. Coleman, Silas whispered. Eliza's hand rested on her belly. Feeling new life move beneath her palm. She looked at the wildflowers, beauty growing from hard ground. Roots deep, blooming despite the winter that came before. I've been home for a while now. What a journey from a frozen platform to a field of wildflowers. The frontier didn't just test them, it forged them. What do you think was the real turning point for Silas? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for being with us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next story.